Hello, and welcome to Art, Creativity, and Wellbeing. This is the show where we're always working to support you in giving as much care and love for yourself as you are accustomed to giving to others. Welcome, welcome. I'm Kay Lockcolp. I am a coach, I'm a facilitator, I'm a creator, I am a through hiker who used to need a wheelchair. And today I'm very, very excited because I'm here with my friend Laurie Smith. Laurie is the author of a wonderful new book. It's called The Flow Habit, and it is about creating peace, passion, purpose, and everyday miracles. Um, she's an inspirational author, professional speaker, workshop facilitator, and coach who's been working in the fields of creativity and personal growth for 25 years. She's on a mission to spread the word about the transformative power of everyday flow, and we get to talk with her today. So, Laurie, welcome, welcome. We're so glad you can join us today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, it's been great to have this connection. Flow is one of those you write a little bit about this. Flow is sort of it's almost like the undercurrent that isn't really always talked about or acknowledged, but once you see it or feel it and recognize it, it's it's you recognize it when you're feeling it again, maybe put it that way.
That's good. I like that.
Um, I think the first question that I have for you is just a real curiosity that I will leave very, very open, and that is, how did you get here?
Mhm. Wow. Um, my passion for flow, I feel like I'm just so infatuated with this idea of flow. And that started really at the start of the pandemic. Prior to that, though, I had been, as you mentioned, doing coaching work and doing energy work and teaching workshops, for many years. I fell into this work because of my own journey and my own yearning for healing and to express my creativity. But something during the start of the pandemic happened where, in those early days of the lockdown, many of us remember, how anxiety provoking that was. I'm a mom, and so my kids were young teenagers at the time. And I remember feeling this just overwhelming feeling of being stuck and just not where I wanted to be. And not just because of the pandemic, but also in my own self. I just, on the outside looking in, our family was doing great. My career was doing great, but there was this piece that I hadn't felt in a long time, and that was flow. And there's a couple different ways to think about flow. I was really familiar with the flow state, which is that feeling we get when we're so locked into doing something that we absolutely love, or sometimes it's not even a passion, but it's just, we're really engaged fully and we experience this like loss of time. We lose track of time. We often lose a sense of our surroundings, but it's this amazing experience that I had experienced a lot in my life, but I hadn't recently at the time of the lockdown. And something that gets me into flow is writing. And so I used to love to write stories when I was a little kid. I was a communications and journalism major. I started my career writing for pharmaceutical companies and corporate writing. But I hadn't been writing much at that time in my life.
Mm.
And so I realized, I decided to do this thing that I called, it was kind of like my secret little challenge to myself. I didn't tell my kids, I didn't tell my husband, and I called it my 28-day flow challenge. And I decided I was just going to write about 5 to 10 minutes a day. It didn't matter what I wrote. I wasn't writing for anybody except myself, and to feel that joy again and reconnect with that part of myself. And if I could, I wanted to experience flow or the flow state.
Mm.
And so I just experimented with this and I started to feel so much better after a few days of just writing whatever, journaling, writing poetry, writing my dreams, that I told other creative friends about it. And I encouraged them to choose whatever activity does that for them. What activity hadn't they done in a long time that was sort of connected to reclaiming a part of themselves that they remember having experienced flow at some point in their life, or that just intuitively was calling to them, and see what happened. So it was kind of like we were on this experiment together. Some of my friends chose painting, others chose sketching, some chose dancing. My mother, who was in her 80s at the time, chose waking up at sunrise every morning and just going out and seeing the sunrise. And she lives on the East Coast. I'm in California. So she continued this through snow and, all kinds of weather.
Mm.
And there was this beauty in sharing our stories. And I started to realize, wow, I feel like we're onto something because we're all feeling so much better. There's a shift happening. And there was also this ripple effect where my writing took off. So I started writing not just 5 to 10 minutes a day, but I actually previously hadn't written poetry. Never really considered myself a poet, never would have wanted necessarily to be a poet, but it was almost like I was hearing poetry, excuse me. And just words were flowing. And so
Uh-huh.
it was, people reconnected with their creativity. Eventually, a couple years later, one of the women started selling her artwork, and she had never she started doing like nature sculptures with little things that she was finding during her walks, and that was her flow activity. And so it was this amazing thing. So I started putting it out on social media, and then I started, because I was writing every day, I was sharing daily emails, and then I was hosting Zoom calls, and there were people showing up from all over the world, from Africa, from India. It was just this incredible, from Europe, different countries in Europe, and it was this incredible community. And what I love most about flow is that when we're in a state of flow, we're less self-conscious. So that part of us that is worried what people think, is doing what we're doing for other. That the volume of that turns way down. And so what's beautiful is then it's just us. It's raw us, right? So on the
Mhm.
Zoom call, as we're sharing our experiences, there are people on the calls that from the outer looking in, they couldn't have been more different than me, right? Different cultures, different politics, different countries. And yet, when we talked about what lights us up, what makes us come alive, what makes us feel alive, what it feels like to be in flow, it's like we're kindred spirits, right? We
Mhm.
know each other. And to be known like that and seen and witnessed by other people that are different than ourselves, like there's a magic to that. And so that one thing led to another. And I wrote one book that was a self-published book that was filled with my poetry. And because I'd done lots of workshops, I filled it with exercises that people could do to connect with their own inner voice. That one was less about flow specifically and more about reclaiming your creative voice. And then I got a book deal with Hay House, and they have published my book, The Flow Habit, which just came out right at the end of last year. So, yeah, so it's been this amazing adventure, and what has happened, which I think is the real beauty and magic of flow, is that flow is contagious and it seems to have a life of its own. So I feel like once we say yes to this energy or these creative ideas that are flowing through us and follow where they lead, even if they seem silly, or even if we feel vulnerable when we're doing it, and we connect with other people who are on similar journeys, and it's as if we intuitively find each other and we just follow. Like I found you,
Mhm.
I saw the colors on your podcast. I think I've told you this, but they're like my favorite colors. So it popped
Ah.
up and I was like, this is, I say follow the sparkles. That's often what I
Mm.
say with flow. It's like, our sparkles can be within, like it can be, I just feel led to use red paint in this painting. I don't know why, but I just
Mhm.
want to do that. Or I feel led to call Kay because her colors of her podcast just feel like my favorite colors, and there must be some synergy there, And so when we kind of step into flow, that's the other definition of flow. And I feel like the two are really intertwined. And that's what I've done in my book. There are great books out there about the flow state and how to get into the flow state. And then there are great books out there about how to manifest and how to, go with the flow. And I feel like what I've tried to do in my book is what I discovered during these 28-day flow challenges and these community gatherings is that the two, I feel like, as humans, we're innately biologically programmed to get into a flow state, just like
Mm,
breathing. It's just a natural function of what it means to be alive. And something magical happens, I think, when we're conscious about how we want to invite flow. We might not experience the flow state each time, but when we're consciously choosing those activities because they're intuitively calling to us, rather than using them to like check out, like scrolling on our phone, or we can get into flow doing lots of things. But what I've tried to do with my book is I often say when we make conscious what we're already doing unconsciously, that's when we have the power to change our lives. And so
mm,
it's like when we all, everybody has this ability to get into flow. I haven't met one person in my interviews who doesn't know this feeling, who doesn't have some memory of this feeling from when they were a little kid, or, we might not experience it all the time, but it's possible for us, and when we bring this consciousness to this, this innate magical ability that we all have, that's when the other sort of flow starts to happen. It's almost like we say yes to that magical flow within us, and then it's like this other magical flow kind of
mm.
happens, and the world answers back. And often it's in the form of other people on similar journeys. It's like we know each other, we recognize each other, we're seeking the same thing, and so we happen to be walking, side by side in the same woods or whatever it is, and
Wow.
so.
Oh, thank you for that. Um, so much that I'm hearing is making me, it's like expanding my thinking, you
Mm,
know, because even in just this one way, we do talk about flow in more than one way. And I hadn't thought about that, right? There is the flow state, which is when you lose time, when you lose track of time, I can remember saying, um, probably somewhere in COVID or somewhere, certainly somewhere after, for longtime listeners might remember that I used to need a wheelchair, that I um, built my body back from 2011 to be able to and did solo hike across northern England. And so much of that can be looked at as the daily habits that I was creating for myself all had to do with getting into a state of flow. And
mm,
what happened from that was this other kind of flow that you're speaking of, which is
mhm.
like you could not, things happened on that trip that I could never have envisioned. In fact, I'd love to share about just one.
Yes, please.
So, I I mean, after I'd sort of gotten my legs a little bit, even just getting there and starting was felt different before I did it than walking at home. You know what I mean? It was the same. I was like, I remember thinking, wow, I'm really quite surprised at how like this 9 miles that I just hiked feels like, it's as if I was hiking in the White Mountains or something like that. It's like, okay, or the Rockies. And the third day, I decided to take transport because at that point I was going about 1 mile per hour. And that was like I believe that was a 12 or 14 mile day. And I was like, I think that, especially with the tendon challenges and things like that, I wanted to make sure that I was honoring myself, and not overdoing it, kind of a thing. Eventually, walking became self-care, and after my rest day, I never took the transport.
Mm,
But before I built into that, I gave myself that permission. And so this one particular day, the driver who I had contracted to, the people who found me my lodging, the people who transported my bag from place to place, so that all I had on my back was like my lunch, some extra clothes, my art stuff. The guy who was tasked with getting me from point A to point B, he for some reason he decided I love this so much. He came into the conversation or into the ride really thrown because he didn't know he was going to be transporting a person. He thought it was all going to be luggage. And I
Mhm.
think he had an agenda or a plan. He was going to try and do it as quickly as he could or go some route that wouldn't be very like amazing. Which isn't impossible in that area of the world. But anyway, so somewhere once we got in the car, we started moving. He looked at me and he said, "You know what I'm going to do?" He said, "I'm going to take you the route that you would have gone. At least I'm going to take you to some of the places accessible by
Mm,
road that you would have gone." Because he said, "Because I want you to see them." And one of those places was this incredible. It was a slate, an old slate mine,
mm,
and it was up in the wilds. I mean, it was you could get to it by road because it was a former mine. And we pulled up and we stopped and he's like, you got to get out. You got to get out and walk around. You just have to see this place. So he walked
mm,
me up to like where there's a beautiful view. And as we came back, I noticed these amazing sculptures of
mm,
slate, right? So there's a motorcycle, there's a story attached to the mine. So over on one side, you've got a mother and child in slate, all in huge sculptures in slate, and on the other side, you've got the father who's gone off to the mines,
mm,
and they don't see that. They don't see that dad again. Like there's a real family that happened to, right? So they're trying to tell a story here. It was beautiful, tragic and tender and beautiful. And there were many more sculptures. It was the most fascinating place just for the sculptures. Never mind all the rest of it, right? So that was day 3. So after my rest day, which I hiked for about 3 weeks. So we're probably talking maybe 10, 12 days later. I ran into a couple and I saw them one staying in one place. Our rooms were adjacent. Like, so we would come out of our doors and be like, hello. And, we're obviously dressed for what we're doing. And then maybe a day or two after that day, we sat together at breakfast. Like,
mm.
we just happened to be in the same inn. We happened to sit together at breakfast. And I discovered that Terry, the husband, was the creator of all of those slate sculptures.
What?
And he did it. It's so interesting you talking about how you came to decide to do this, right? Like
Hmm.
how flow worked for you. You gave yourself a secret little challenge. You really wanted it to be just for you. He was in his, I believe, his 50s when he became very ill from the work that he was doing just because of the stress, just because of the mess. And this is a British guy, so they lived somewhere in England at the time, and he and his wife. I don't remember if they moved. I think they might have actually moved. But anyway, he went to the slate mine one day and said, like, you know, can I bring home a piece of slate and like play with it? And they were like, yes, please, because it wasn't an official mine anymore. It was more of a tourist attraction. And he started just for himself making just fooling around with slate in the basement. And he credits his wife, his partner, with just being such a kind person to watch this transition in him and
Mm,
support that. And I believe they've eventually relocated. I could be making that up, but in any case, he became the official Honister Slate Mine sculptor. And I met it was so wild. I was like, these are incredible. I can't believe I get to see them. Wow, wow, wow. And then to meet the person who made them was just that to me feels like both kinds of flow. Because I was in flow, here he is in flow, here is the flow, right?
And you started the story by talking about the driver who was put out,
Yep.
had a different agenda, and
Yep.
then something within him led him to do this generous thing for you that he
Yep.
didn't have to do, but something intuitively led him to show you that mind. So it's
Yeah.
like he was in on it too. It's just
Yeah.
so beautiful and magical. I love that story. That's so it's like it's almost like you can see the building blocks or the pieces,
Yeah.
being assembled and what is that? Like that's what I call the greater flow energy, and it could be soccer players on a field, and the greater flow energy is just that they're all working as one and they're in team flow. The greater flow energy can be this just what is that? It's that
Mm,
those invisible connections between us when we drop in, even just for a moment, out of being self-conscious. That's the key for me is like, how can we create emotional safety for ourselves and others? But even just starting with ourselves so that we can drop into that greater flow. So even if we're not in the flow state, like how can we dial it down? And it's different for each of us and it's different for different situations, but something happened in that driver that he was able to get past whatever his struggle was, whatever his ego wanted to do, whatever the surprise, like throws us surprises all the time.
mm,
And we all react in a way that, it was palpable. You could see he wasn't too happy about whatever happened, and that's human and that's okay. And that doesn't mean that we're not going to still find our way through that
mm,
to flow. Like it's always available to us.
mhm.
And when it happens, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And you're telling me, and someone is listening to the story about the slate sculptures. So it's the ripples are continuing, who
Yeah.
knows what it's going to touch. I know I got goosebumps and my eyes welled. And my eyes welled up when you talked about the driver. Most
Mm,
of all, it's
mm,
like how do we each he probably will never know, maybe not, what a key role he played in some inner transformation in all of us, being
yeah.
part of this story.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the faith and the hope I think that helps so much when we hear that from another. Like, somehow there were moments during those early 28-day flow challenges where I was like, oh, this is so silly. Or I'd handwrite questions and put them out on Facebook, and my Facebook was, my personal Facebook account. So it was people that knew me from all walks of life. And there's always or all the phases of my life. And there's always that voice that's like, oh, what will they think? Oh, maybe I won't,
Mm, mhm.
whoever they is. And so it's like how if we know the ripples that moving past those worrying about what people think or the they and our the invisible they in our minds or whatever it is, or our grumpy plan that's our grumpy selves that's unhappy that our plan didn't work out today, and if we can in the book, I have something called the Safer Flow Cycle, and it corresponds to the acronym SAFER. And the S is struggle. So it's anytime we have moments like that where it's like life sends us something that we didn't expect or it, has us off balance. And then the A is accept. And there is a lot out there about the flow cycle originally was discovered by Herbert Benson, who was a cardiologist who wrote the book, The Relaxation Response. I don't know if you remember that book from the 70s, but it was a bestseller. And it was all about how we have this re natural innate relaxation response within us. And that, when we connect with it, miracles can happen. So anyway, there's been a lot on that, but in my book, I included after struggle this A, which is accept. And I think it's so important because we all have hard times and we all come up against resistance to following flow and going where our inner spark it wants to call, following the sparkles. We all have those moments where we don't want to go, we don't want to or we judge ourselves as wrong for feeling struggle or being bent out of shape and not, or we judge others for being very human, right? And then there's when we accept, we soften. And
Mm,
there's like, okay, no big deal. We're struggling. No big deal. We all have bad days. No big deal. We all have, change of plans, resistance to that. And when we accept that, then the F is find a way to flow. And that's so unique to each situation and each of us. And anyway, and the F also represents I have 4 steps to getting into flow, which are FEEL. So it's like rather than thinking our way into flow, we
Hmm.
feel our way into flow. And then the E is enjoy the moment. It's like once we find our own path through the resistance, we enjoy the moment. Like that driver, probably really enjoyed showing you those sculptures and connecting with you on a deep level. And you had this moment, right? That had the
100%.
ripple effects and
Yeah.
that we're talking about. And then the R is rest. But we talked a little bit about this before we started the camera about synthesis and how integration, we need to integrate, what happens to us as we go through transformation. And that's what happens during rest.
Mm.
We need to take breaks. You needed your rest day. You needed it because on some level, you were probably intuitively needed to not just rest your physical body, but integrate what was
What was
happening,
happening? Yep.
and show up in a stronger state for the next struggle that came or whatever it was. And so, anyway, thank you so much for sharing that story. It's really cool.
Oh, you're welcome. I I'm I've been thinking as I've been hearing you speak of safer, SAFER, and
Hmm.
feel, FEEL. I've been thinking about too, because you're absolutely right. This gentleman whose name I happen to weirdly remember, his name was Dave. And he at the beginning was, I would even say there was grumpiness because he was feeling pressure. There was pressure there somehow. I'm not sure how. I like, right, I wasn't in his mind.
Hmm.
But eventually, and he wasn't hearing from the person who was supposed to have told him about me, about, that you're picking somebody up. And it's somewhere along the way, right? I love that you brought him up because his for whatever reason, um, his whole mindset shifted to one of very relaxed, peaceful, like, well, we're here anyway. Why don't I just take you the best way? And then even after that, he was, as we were headed over that was a pass. We were headed over the pass to where I would be staying that night. And he was like, you don't know how lucky you are. Your inn is steps, like it was like 10 steps away from the end or the beginning, I suppose, of the bus route that will take you from where you're staying tonight all the way up to this market town and back. And it's a domed double-decker bus, is this
Hmm.
route. And he was like, you're going to have so much fun. I was like, I am. And I did. Oh gosh, I loved it. But all it's funny because the words that kept coming up in my mind as you were reflecting so beautifully back to me was the word forgiveness, which isn't that an interesting word?
Mm.
I've been thinking, and the reason it comes up for me is because I have been for years now, I've been practicing a discipline called loving kindness. I
Hmm.
don't know if you're familiar, Laurie, with loving
I
kindness, but
am.
yeah. And it is all about wishing yourself well and loved,
Hmm.
wishing others well and loved. And the invitation is there to, even if it's someone that perhaps in the past you have felt very not okay about or with, if
Hmm.
it's someone in your own life or someone in the world, to wish them love. And
Hmm.
and really the the mechanism that I have found I was not expecting, I think, was if I'm really angry and caught up in that, for example, then those feelings are in my body, right?
Hmm.
And I'm experiencing all that anger and frustration. And
Hmm.
so to genuinely be able to wish someone well,
Hmm.
um, means that in my body are feelings of wellness. I've actually heard it described as it's like if you've got, you do have a bunch of compassion, but it's kind of like it's on a shelf in the back basement where you don't have real good access to it. So what
Hmm.
this does is it helps you kind of like take the rusty lid off of the compassion
Hmm.
and really have it accessible there. And um I feel There's something very similar about this because it's reciprocal, perhaps, is the word that's
Hmm.
in my head.
Well, I love what you're sharing. And the word safer, I have spoken to groups where there's a bit of a misunderstanding or it feels like a disconnect with the word safer, because often w when we stretch out of our comfort zone, we don't feel safe sometimes, right?
Mm,
So we're challenging ourselves to stretch out of our comfort zone. And so the word safer I use for two reasons. The first I've already touched on, which is emotional safety, right? So I love looking at flow as how we create turning points in our life, right? So the first is, somehow this driver, we'll just continue to go with the example, right? Like
yep.
found his way through his own struggle or whatever, all that stuff we don't even know what was going on in his internal world, nor could we. But somehow he found his way to feel safe with you so that he opened up. Like there was a shift that happened, right? We
Mm,
don't we don't know what, we don't know how, but in my experience, that shift always comes from a feeling of emotional safety. Either we
mm,
trust the other person, so we're willing to take a risk, so that word risk, right? We something leads us to taking the risk, which is emotional safety or emotional safety with ourselves. Like I had to really accept myself and be like, you know what, this just feels important. I'm going to put this out there anyway. So, but something happened internally with me to be able to put that little funny, card out on Facebook or whatever and be like, I love myself enough that no matter what happens, I'll be able to laugh. I'll be able to breathe through it. I'll be able to,
mm,
it didn't happen. My worst fears didn't happen. And even if I had only done it once, but there was that internal emotional safety.
mm,
But what I love about your story about walking again is the second version of safety that which is why I chose it for this flow cycle. And that is that we often think, oh, we'll be safer if we hunker down and hide, right?
mm,
We'll be safer if we go in a small space and we don't let our feelings get hurt. We don't put it out on the social media. We hide. Or, maybe he, whatever, the driver, we obviously don't know his story and I don't want to put too much on there, but whatever. He could have
Something
locked,
was,
not opened up to you or whatever, been in.
yeah,
And the forgiveness piece that you're sharing, right? Like it takes courage to forgive, but you are safer if you forgive because your body works better, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
I am safer creatively when I take these risks because I'm not feeling depressed. I'm not so physically we are safer. Or when we get into a flow state, right? Like sometimes, there's so many fun ways to think about it, and every flow state and every situation is different. But when we create this emotional safety for ourselves or other, that's when we can take a leap. That's when we can take the risk. And that's when we also have the clarity of thinking so that it's a safe enough risk. And the flow habit, the fact that I only did flow 5 to 10 minutes a day, it's all about baby steps and creating new neural pathways. And the
Mm,
other piece of this idea in flow is there's something called the skills challenge ratio, which is basically we take risks, but we don't, it's not like we throw the kid in the end of the into the ocean and say swim, right?
mm,
We take safe risks. We take risks that stretch us out of our comfort zone just enough so we have the skills to handle it, but we're that so you were constantly tuned into your body during that walk, right? And you
mm,
knew for whatever reason or you believed that that day it might just be too much of a stretch, right? And so you restored your ability to go every day and a mile an hour, that was your just right point, right? You didn't push yourself to go beyond. And so it's that there's a huge connection between this self-awareness, this inner knowing and the compassion piece that you speak of, right? It's like we know our limits. we know our abilities, and we love ourselves enough and or have the courage to create emotional safety for ourselves and others enough that we can keep moving forward. And that's when we're really safe. Like that's when we
Mm.
live longer. When I say safe, like that's when civilizations are safer because people are getting into the flow state, and that's when the inventions happen, right? That's when the sculptures in slate are created, right?
Yeah.
That's when the thing, that's when that, and that's the piece with creativity. That's when creative people show up and come up with inventions that change the world, that save the day, that come up with the solution for global warming, that,
Yep.
that is done in a flow state. Like we can't push the envelope. We can't change where we are in our lives, in our relationships, in the world, unless we get into the flow state, right? And so we are safer. Our world is safer. Our relationships are safer. We're safer in community. We connect with community. The team's safer. The team wins the championship. The kids are safer in the classroom when their teachers are in flow and they're stretching themselves because they're going to use those skills. They're going to need those skills to get a job, to feed their families, to whatever. Like that's the ripple effect of flow. Like that's
Wow.
why flow is so, so important. And why emotional safety is so important, right? It's
Yeah.
like for the good of humankind, for the good of the world. Like this is it, right?
Yeah.
This is it. And we
Yeah.
have these small little examples in our lives, but they're not so little. They
No.
are like everything's in that story that you told, like
Mm.
everything. The
Wow.
all the recipes that all of us need, right? To remember when we're just showing up all by ourselves, feeling a little depressed, feeling a little grumpy, feeling like life changed out, or the rug was pulled out from under us and we're trying to find grounding again. And then we too can f figure out what's sparkling, find our own way
Yeah.
through our loving kindness to ourselves, to others, find our way to accept, realize that whatever we're going through or whatever that person's going through, we've experienced a grumpy day just like the driver. Like so, we might not fully understand it, we might not know the story, but we all kind of know what that feels like, and then we create these turning points together as a community. So, anyway,
Wow.
this is why I'm so passionate about flow and the potential, and why I wrote the book, and why I'm on this journey. Because there's just this is it, this is the
Yeah.
key. If we can just stay with ourselves, stay with others, believe, keep telling each other like there is this energy within us. Those crazy ideas aren't so crazy,
Mhm.
and maybe it to him, maybe to that driver, it's just a story. Maybe he's forgotten it. Maybe he remembers you. We don't know.
Mhm.
But it's also good to remember like it might not be about you.
Mhm.
Like you feeling called, us feeling called, like me doing that 28-day flow challenge, right? Like it's changed my life. I've written a book. I've met so many great people. But even if that hadn't happened, the stories of the people that did the 28-day flow challenge that had their lives change just because I created the space and just showed up and like I'm trying this. I don't know if it'll work, but I'm doing this by myself. It could have stopped there. And still there was that ripple effect. So we have to remember that too, right? Like if we might not see the whole story ever.
Mm.
We might not see how smiling at someone in the grocery store, I mean, we've all heard those stories, and on social media, there's all those great, posts like you just happen to smile at somebody, or, happen to help somebody who really needed it that day. And it's fun
Mm.
to think about, right? And I think the flow is that way too, right? We might have this great experience and it changes our lives, like your walk. But even just sharing your story and your walk has these ripple effects, right? And might touch someone else's heart that makes them, you know, stretch out of their comfort zone and create their everyday miracles. So, anyway.
Yeah. And I'm immediately reminded of I remember getting home from the walk and being in the grocery store one day. And great music happened to be on the grocery store's radio system. And I was like literally singing and dancing my way through the grocery store. And three people that day were like, "You look like you're having a really good day." And I was
Oh,
like, "I am." That actually happened to be There was a special celebration going on at our son's high school. My parents were in town. Like there was a lot that was really good. And I just felt amazing.
Mm,
And I was on top of the world. I'd just done this awesome thing. But they didn't know that, to your point. So me or us being in a place, I would describe that as flow. I could have stood there for hours and danced. I mean, I was having a ball. I have no idea how long I was in the grocery store. Doesn't matter, right?
yeah.
Um, but those people were materially impacted by me giving myself the permission to dance and sing my way around the grocery store.
Yes.
And you all through our conversation today, you've beautifully, beautifully referenced like emotional safety, the permissions, the grace to give ourselves if we're not in that space is the thing that's going to help us come back to it,
Yes.
you know?
Yes. Because there's so much out there about thinking positive, right? And so in the book I came up with this word called floativate. And I love that word because it's silly. Every
Mm.
time I say it, people smile, right? So like first of all, like, yay, we can come up with words, you know.
Hmm.
And the energy of the word kind of says what I hope I made it up to mean, which is this. It's th there's something in our communities with the 28-day flow challenge. I always said, okay, the rule is when we lift each other up, we all rise, right? That's the rule. Like we're only here to lift each other up. Like
Hmm.
that's what this experiment's all about. And Floativate is kind of that idea. It's like we're not always going to be in a flow state. We're not always going to be flow ready. But what can we do personally, and how can we learn and study ourselves and discover what works that helps us floativate, helps us become available to flow, right? And so
Hmm.
you being around someone dancing and singing in a grocery store is a great way to floativate, right? Is a great way to so you doing that and spreading your light and your joy on a day when you were really joyful is
Hmm.
a great way to lift other people up so we can all rise because we all know the feeling. I had one just yesterday, grocery store. I didn't want to go to the grocery store, right? I had to get dinner, I had to get food, and I was a little grumpy, right? And so we all know both.
Hmm.
And so it's good to remember. There's a lot of information in the book about how little I came up with something called the Feel Positive Flow Framework, which the FEEL are the 4 steps to flow, but the word positive are all the benefits to flow and all the positive benefits to flow.
Hmm.
And even just a little d dash of one of them can help us floativate and lift up, just like whether it's smiling or moving our bodies or all those things. It's just important to remember that the power of positivity, but not from a fake
Yes.
perspective. And what
Every
yeah, the
I
emotional safety piece is key. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm jumping in because you just said something that really, really resonated, which is that it is the other thing that we've spoken of throughout the conversation is it's got to really be happening in ourselves and our bodies. Like it doesn't fake positivity doesn't do anyone any good. And today when we're like literally today as before we recorded, or I would say even say this started for me last night. I was in a space that was really not an amazing positive space.
Hmm.
And rather than I guess beat myself up for that
Hmm.
or just all the things that I maybe used to do or that seems like are present in in the zeitgeist, I guess, complaining or things like that. I could see myself and hear myself doing them and just be patient with myself rather
Hmm.
than being like, "Come on, book up, little camper." You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that doesn't work for
Yeah.
me anyway. But
Hmm.
what works is going on a walk. No, like being able to say, "All right, I got nothing right now. It
Hmm.
is not a good day to continue trying to do something that doesn't feel aligned
Yes.
because I just it will not turn out well and it's not making me happy. So what will make me happy? Okay, a walk will make me happy. Like
Yes.
pastels on sanded paper without any Judgment will make me happy. Like
Yes.
what is it? A conversation with a wonderful person like my friend Laurie will make me happy. Um, but it's all, I think we are perhaps learning this more and more.
Mhm.
And I've learned some of this from my children. So I think this is a wonderful thing about humanity. Um, they've taught me a lot about just being patient with oneself while we're coming through something and
Mhm.
knowing that we'll get out the others. You know, it'll work out.
Mhm.
But without a sort of like fakey feeling at all. Like it's
Mhm.
motivated from inside, period. And
Mhm.
that's okay, because
Yeah.
that will shift.
Mhm.
We can trust that.
Yeah, that is the magic is that the
Hmm.
accepting that right now in this moment we're feeling a little funky, just what you're saying right now and like right now in that moment or that you described you were feeling out of alignment and you couldn't, and sometimes we make that so wrong that we
Yeah.
don't even give ourselves the awareness that we're feeling that way and then we don't accept it. And so
Yeah.
then we stay stuck and struggle, right? Or then we create new problems and new angst because we're feeling like something's wrong with me that I can't get this done today or I
Hmm.
can't, and so the accept is so that's the key, right? And then it's like once we say for me, that normalizing, once we do that and we're like, you're not the only one. Lots of people have bad days. Lots of
Hmm.
people have let's not be in denial here. We're all human. We've all had a grumpy day at the grocery store, probably, and then it just like takes, I don't know, for me, that's the key. It's like then I just there's a weight or I often call myself a recovering perfectionist and it's
Mm.
like that belief that there is someone out there who has never had a grumpy day and that I'm less than because I do,
Mm.
and we're fed that, but we could put our attention to all the messages out there and make them vilify, society or vilify social media or whatever. But that doesn't help us
Because
tend
we
to our
feel
heart.
that in our body. So
Yeah.
what are we feeling in our body? Yeah, just
Yeah,
to be.
regardless of where the messages came from, regardless of the fact, yeah, we have neural pathways that are telling us that. So, even when we've done a lot of inner work and we're like, okay, and then every once in a while I have those thoughts like, oh, something's wrong with me that I'm, can't get out of my own way today. I live in the Bay Area and it's June right now and it's foggy and it's
Mm.
foggy day after day after day. And I'm feeling my energy like, and I'm from the East
Mm.
Coast and I'm like, oh, it's sunny there, and even that, we've all had days where we've been more sensitive to the fog, the
Yeah.
external fog than
Yeah.
others, and once as a practice, I know in the book I describe a retreat I did with Pema Chodron, who's a Buddhist nun, and she teaches meditation. And you mentioned loving kindness, and she teaches this compassionate abiding meditation, and it's a form of Tonglen meditation. And so I encourage if anybody is interested in this, they can look her up because she's definitely the I wouldn't say that I teach it, but I practice it in my own life a lot. And it is this feeling that when we are having a not a moment where we're feeling cranky, right? Or we're feeling not okay, or we're having emotion that we might say is less than positive, that we just focus on our heart and we try to imagine feeling that emotion so much that it's like our heart is breaking open, so it's
Mm.
like just for a split second let yourself feel cranky, like let myself feel that dull heaviness that comes from not seeing sunlight for day after day, and
Mm.
just feel it and feel it, feel it. And you kind of breathe in so much that you feel like your heart's breaking open because you're just feeling it so much. And when you reach that crescendo, it's almost like flow, like a peak state. When you reach that peak, couple seconds where you're just like, okay, I can't feel it anymore. In that moment, what I love to do and what she teaches is imagine all the people all around the world right now that might be in a foggy place, in a smoggy place, might be locked inside, might be working inside, might not have seen the sunlight, and might be feeling down because of it. And like just connecting with all of those people. And then you imagine, okay, what's the opposite of depressed because of fog, you know? And for me, it might be
Mm.
sunlight, like just sunlight. And so you first send yourself just the energy of sunlight, just like I imagine it just like pouring all over my body and just bright, sparkly sunlight. Like I'm like, okay, imagine I'm on vacation and I'm laying on a hot, hot, hot sun, you know, sunny sand or whatever. And then you imagine it flowing to all those people, sending them like loving kindness and you know, the
Wow.
wish that they, in this moment, wherever they are on the other side of the earth, whether they're in prison or whether they're, you know, in a building with fluorescent lights or whatever it is, or have fog too, you know, that they feel just this wish, you know, you send them a wish that they experience a little light too.
Wow.
And that helps me because when I'm in the grocery store and I'm picking out my groceries and I can, if I'm aware that I'm feeling grumpy, I can do it in a second. You know, I can just
Yeah.
like imagine feeling it. You know, and there's something with the breaking open of the heart that makes it's a vulnerability.
Hmm.
And I've had people, you know, I've bumped into friends at the grocery store who I just happen to be doing this, and they're like, "Are you okay?" You know, and they're looking at me deep in my eyes, you know, and there must have been like a tenderness or
Mm.
something that I was showing, and it's like, I don't know, something about that vulnerability for self. That's my practice. Like that's how I
Yeah.
create emotional safety for myself over and over again when I think of it, you know, not every day, but and I think there's just some, for me, it's like I've spent so much of my life in my mind thinking that there is some perfectionism or there is some level that there's something wrong with me if I haven't met a certain level of whatever. And you know, the neural pathways are there, so it's something I'm always battling. But for me, the normalizing, if I'm like, there's an awful lot of people all over the world who also feel like they're not measuring up or who also have those neural pathways from the way they were raised or just being in the soup we're all swimming in or
Hmm.
you know whatever it is. I know kids today, you know, have a much higher rate of perfectionism even than we did growing up because of the social media and this external, internal. And so it's like the whole goal of a big focus in my book and emotional safety and flow is turning down the volume on that focusing on the exterior and external standards. That's a great anything we can do, whether it's the Tonglen, you know, compassionate abiding meditation I just described, or the loving kindness that you just described, or the you know, smiling and dancing, or the just accepting that, you know, we're not the only ones. You know, and anything we can do to shift and create our own little turning point, that is floativating, right? And that is how we get into a flow state. So,
Yeah. How the time flies. We are basically at the end of our time together. And Lori, I'm so very glad that you've been able to bring your spirit,
mm,
into this room and the ideas and the flow. It's been absolutely speak of losing time, right? Talking about losing time. Is there just as we're wrapping up, is there anything that you feel you'd like to add or share as we finish up?
no, I mean, I think the main reason I love flow so much is if we can navigate this, all the things that we just described, it connects us with that spark within. And so,
Yeah.
if there's anything I want to leave your listeners or your viewers with, it's just a reminder that they have that. Like they have something unique that the world really needs, an energy, a spark, a light, whether it's in their creation or whether it's just in their interaction with how they show up with one other person like that driver did with you. You know, it's like we each have that. And I think just remembering that can help us get through really hard times that, you know, there is a magic within each of us. And so, yeah, keep flowing and keep remembering that and finding your own. And also, there is no formula. We all have our own unique way of connecting with flow based on whatever's happening for us today in the world, you know, whatever we're feeling called to share, whatever we're working on, whatever our purpose is, you know. And so just, to stay with yourself and trust what works for you because there's no one right answer.
Mm, so much is resonating. Um, there's not a perfect way. What a great way to wrap up because
Mhm.
and that everyone has their own way that you don't have to do it anybody else's way. You can trust yourself. This feels like a really
Mhm.
beautiful end to a beautiful conversation.
Thank you.
You can find Laurie at www.lauriesmith.com. And you can find her book wherever you get your books.
Mhm.
This book, anyway, about flow. Uh, and yeah, I mean, just feeling so much gratitude for you, Laurie, to come on the show and talk with us, and um, wishing you very well.
Thank you. I'm feeling gratitude too. I just love connecting with you. And yeah, we said before this that things will come out. We don't know where this conversation will lead us. And I feel very much that way, that it's just been a joy.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, yeah. You're welcome. For me too.
Mhm.
All right, friends. Thanks for being here with us, and we will see you next time.